Owain Yeoman and Tim Kang aren't real cops, but they're
TV police!
the TV police.
Red Brick and Ivy.
There it is. Yes. Love it. Love it. Look at those guys.
Look at these guys, huh?
Yeah.
I put the legs back in the right order.
Well, it didn't look right at all the other way.
It was a bit bizarro, but
Yeah.
it's these guys have been fondly watching the episode. Red Brick and Ivy, and there it is.
There's the red brick.
But I'm going to put these guys down here. I just want to take a small refreshment break here. We've had the quench, right?
We've had quench. Big
Yeah. And
quench.
what, just remind me, run through. Big
Okay,
quench.
so let's see. The smallest size is quench. Then comes big quench.
Yeah.
Then super big quench.
Was there a
And
double
then-
quench as well?
And then double quench at the
Double
end.
quench. Okay. Now,
Here it
I
comes.
went looking to see if there was a quench bigger. Yeah, I'm a big guy,
Mega
you know.
quench.
Well,
Ultra.
I actually present to you the max quench.
And to go off of that, can I have another one?
Now, you know what they say? It's not the size of the quench, it's what you do with it. So I'm going to leave that there.
I love
Oh.
the max quench.
Max quench. It's nice. It's nice to be back, you and I. I feel like it's been
Yeah.
a minute since it's just been you and I. It feels
has
very,
been.
like,
Mhm.
dare I say it, just very comfortable and easy. I'm
Yeah.
sort of sat here in my pajamas from my
Just-
waist down, and
Right.
number
right.
2 in Uzbekistan. I will say, as a little update, continued strong traction in a lot of Europe, and especially in Eastern Europe, Slovenia, Slovakia. I noticed we were just racing up the charts today. I think we just charted at 19 today. So, Red Brick and Ivy, written by Owen Mahoney. An interesting episode today for a lot of reasons. And I thought, I'll be honest with you, it was an episode that I had to watch a few times. There was so many different threads. I found, now you mentioned that there was an episode a few episodes back where you found the same.
My take on it was more along the lines of how it's fit in with the episodes that we've done so far.
Sure.
It's very different in a few ways. It kind of stands alone in, obviously the subject matter and how it's presented.
I think so. And I think, what you're alluding to obviously is the first decent look into Jane's past.
Mhm.
And I think that is something that's been very, very lightly alluded to up until this point, but we got a real deep dive into it. And I thought it was really interesting coming off the back of, I think it was last week's episode where there was that big speech about fools and madmen.
Mhm.
And how vengeance
At the end, yeah.
and revenge was the preserve of fools and madmen. And now here we have the very real specter of Jane actually having sort of admitted to Lisbon that he had a period of time in a facility and was quite literally sort of driven insane, I think, by the terrible things that had happened to him. And I
Sure,
remember
of
that this
course.
was an episode that I felt very, very sort of an accessory
Attached.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And watching it back, it was a wonderful opportunity for me to really appreciate a lot of the story that I hadn't been party to whilst
Sure.
filming. This is a really important milestone, I think, early on to understand who Jane is, because I think we've seen a lot of him as light and breezy right up until now,
mhm.
and even now when we meet Dr. Sophie Miller, his psychiatrist, there's the initial sort of breeziness, flirtation,
Sure.
but then those flashbacks begin to reveal something.
Although that breeziness when meeting with Sophie Miller is guarded.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not the breeziness that he would walk in to talk to Cho and Rigsby.
Right. Well, let's talk about that, because
it's a very guarded moment. And then I just wanted to back up real quick something you said. One of my takeaways was that scene that you were just talking about with Jane and Lisbon. That was a really wonderful scene. It's the scene where Jane and Lisbon, they're in Lisbon's office, and Lisbon is demanding what the relationship is between him and Sophie Miller and why she's sticking her neck out. Jane describes the room he was in, and Lisbon says, "I'm surprised that she could keep you in the room." And Jane responds with, "Well, it was a locked room." And that hit me. We go, off a little bit. And it's, I think that relationship between Jane and Lisbon, or this revelation between Jane and Lisbon, is kind of what keeps this particular episode grounded.
I couldn't agree more with that. I think that's a wonderful assessment. And I think all kudos to Robin and Simon for giving it that fundamental grounding. I thought it was a beautiful scene. I thought it was played very against sentiment too. I think there's a world in which Simon could have played that very woe is me, but typical to Jane, it was done with a sort of a defensive bonhomie, a defensive sort of like lightness. But underneath, boy, you could see the weight of that. And it's lovely being able to see that, because quite often, as supporting performers, we weren't in those scenes. We don't often get a chance then to luxuriate and watch the episode afterwards, because we're straight into other episodes. Would you like to have a stab at today's synopsis?
Sure. Let me get from my memory here.
And if you could do it in a way where your like eyes don't move line to line.
Neuroscience researcher Alex Nelson is poisoned with cyanide. His ex-wife, Sophie Miller, is a fellow researcher and Patrick Jane's former psychiatrist after his wife and daughter were murdered. It is revealed that Alex Nelson and his ex-wife Sophie Miller were working on a Leland University research project nicknamed the Morality Engine. The CBI team investigates the CBI team's investigation leads them to animal rights groups, research assistants, and Sophie Miller as potential suspects.
I'm going to dive straight into my word for today.
Please.
And I sort of played with a few, but I came down to something very fundamental and very simple, and it was lies.
Great.
And
Owen's word is lies.
Lies.
My word... Range.
And as you said that, the camera found its range.
Yes, it did.
Got right on there. It was nice.
My second word.
Of course. Your second word in the one-word remembrance, which is 2 words, Star Trek. Okay.
There we go.
So your 3 words crammed into one. Yeah. Tim's a fabulous actor, but numbers were never his strong suit. Let's just quickly, because you brought it up, engage the morality engine. Okay?
Yeah.
Because thank goodness for the grounding that we had in that. Because on the one hand of this, we have the most hyper-real and the most sort of emotionally grounded moments. And yet we're also being asked to subscribe to the fact that you have a brain calibration tool that could possibly, just with the twitch of a button, go evil, good. Back to evil, good. I had a hard time with that,
I did
because it was, and I think also in the execution of it did come across a little bit strange, because the questions also were very, very odd. The questions that you ask people. And I think it's actually a line in the episode where they say that, good people can do bad things and bad people can do good things. And those things don't necessarily or inherently make you one or the other. So I think just the reduction of this and to the credit of both Owen and the episode, Owen the writer, we back off it and admit that it doesn't work.
Right.
But there was a lot of sort of, and I guess this is part 1 of my word, lies. The lies we tell, I guess, in this case, to protect your career. This is a lie that, and that's really what becomes the heart and the motive of the murder. We cannot let anyone know that the morality engine doesn't work, as if anyone believed it might.
Right. I think that it's a perfect time, since the morality engine is what we're talking about, to go into my word, because it's also has to do with that, but from a different angle, because of how our show is grounded in a lot of ways, especially in this episode with Jane and Lisbon were allowed to do an episode about the morality engine or some of these more outside theories. And that brings us to my word, which is range. Now, what I meant by the range was we can do a hard-boiled detective murder mystery episode, and then we can do a Stutzer Institute morality engine episode, as well. So the range of storytelling that we have at our disposal, because of the way that the show is set up, works. We're equally adept at doing the drama part of it as well as the comedy part of it, or the hard grounded stuff, or the more theoretical kind of things. And so
I think you're absolutely right. And
because we are grounded, we can delve into some of the Star Trek elements of it. Like, for example, the synchronous oscillator kept tripping off, but I decided to bypass the differential filters.
Yes.
I think it's producing an ion flow into the dendrite.
I'm going to max quench on that.
We got a max quench break.
Right.
And this is my favorite line from this episode. Now I'm going to make him evil.
Warp speed. Let's go. Now I'm going to make him evil. I know you're a great student of language, and you pointed out a few times some things that bumped up against you. Something that I noticed a few times in this episode was a repetition of the same line. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
It happened a couple of times, and I wondered whether it was a stylistic thing. Where is it?
But while you're looking, I mean, that's why even we can have fun and enjoy an episode like this.
He's got it coming. He's got it coming. The crazy cat guy says it twice.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
And then the professor earlier says something where he said it twice. And so the first time I was like, oh, that's kind of a quirky character moment. The second time I was like, that's a writer quirk.
That's on purpose.
And it's interesting, sort of throwing my mind back to what Ken was saying. He was very hot on, letting actors speak his words, because he said that was the first sort of acid test. And from our standpoint, I'm sitting there as an actor wondering about, I hope the performance is going right. But there's also 85 other people all sitting there going, I hope my words get spoken right. I hope the continuity for this scene gets done right. I hope my costume looks good. I hope the hair that I've done looks good. There are a couple of things that did make me laugh unintentionally, like the bottle with poison written on it. Like, we know it's poison because it has poison written on it. And there's a skull and crossbones as well, which I actually do think cyanide actually has that on there, but it was just funny to see it.
Yeah. Because it's such a cartoon element, right? A cartoon image with the skull and the crossbones. There is an interesting thing that I noticed in this first season when we're at Video Village and we're looking at, a replay of a take. You have to keep in mind who is saying what and what their job is. For example, one of the costumers, I was sitting in hair and makeup, and the costumer came up to me and said, have you seen the latest episode, the one we just finished? No, I haven't seen it yet. It looks amazing. It looks absolutely amazing. You're going to be really happy with it. And I was like, oh, that's fantastic. And I, got the DVD and I looked at it, and then it dawned on me that she was talking about the wardrobe.
Of course.
That's her job. And the wardrobe, it looks beautiful. The whole episode is beautiful, but from the wardrobe costumer's point of view. I'm looking at it going, I don't understand what she is talking about.
That's a very interesting observation, and I think you're absolutely right. I reconnected recently with Dan Church, who was our sound guy. We sadly lost another one of our sound guys, Lance. Right? He was didn't he? He passed a few years back. Lance had this genius technique where, at the end of a long day, everyone, cast, crew, producers, everyone wants to get home. And so Lance would be the guy holding the boom. And he developed a technique where at the end of every take, he would finish it by going, wow, wow. That's the one. That is the one. So you'd be like,
Moving on.
Lance would be like, wow. Moving on. And psychologically, I don't know if it ever pushed us forward, but it was, I really appreciated the energy and the attempts to do that.
great.
And if I have one fond remembrance of Lance, it was just like finishing a dreadful scene or a scene where I was like, wow, I sucked in that. And he was like, wow.
Wow, that's amazing. That's it. Nailed it. Nailed it.
We can't talk about this episode without talking about Sophie Miller. Interesting character, a difficult character in many ways to access because for me, not instantly likable. I couldn't put my finger on what it was about her, but I think maybe because there was such upheaval, it was ex-husband, murdered, she's spiky. Again, we see the mentalist trope of incompetent local police force getting run over by the suspect. She asserts this sort of very spiky energy right from the get-go. And I thought that was interesting from a psychiatrist because I'd imagined that she might be a little bit more sympathetic. What were your sort of first thoughts on the character?
I think they align with what you just said. Not immediately likable and trying to find a way in, especially because as a fan of Patrick Jane, obviously she is important to Patrick Jane. And so as an audience member trying to find a way in to appreciate who Sophie Miller was. All in all, in the reveal, we understand it. But as written, I think it was kind of meant to be a little bit off-putting or a little bit, arm's length from us.
For me, the Miller morality engine could have been calibrated slightly towards nicer. He has deep love for this woman. I wouldn't venture even to say that it was a sexual love. I think it is the love for someone who has literally saved his life. And that's what's complicated about that relationship and so beautifully played. And it got me asking a lot of questions because that can't have been an easy journey to have navigated. And so you have that moment where he kind of half kisses her on the lips and half kisses her on the cheek.
Right.
So you don't really know if it's a sexual kiss or a kiss of gratitude of like, I've unburdened myself. And these journeys or these quests.
I think it's the latter.
I think it is too.
Especially also going off of Lisbon's reaction to it. Right.
Well, what's interesting is
Jane
that
kissed a girl.
Jane kissed a girl.
Yeah.
But is that
I feel like if it was an amorous sort of on the sexual side of things, we would have seen a little bit more from Lisbon. No. Right. A little hint of jealousy maybe in there. No.
Well, I actually thought there was a little hint of jealousy, but what I always loved about the way Robin played Lisbon was that she was a very emotionally unavailable. Certainly in job mode, she was always just boss. And I think that the idea of seeing a softer or a more emotional side of Lisbon is something that we earn as the series goes on. I'd be excited to talk to you.
She reveals a little bit of it in that scene.
For sure. But I think it's done through the guise of humor is what I'm saying. And so when she gets in the car.
I mean, the office scene.
Oh, sure.
Yes, she says, thank you for sharing that with me. And there is sort of a heartfelt feeling behind it. It's
well, I think there's also the question of
heartfelt feeling. Is that a
Sure. Yeah. It was a real feeling that I felt. For me, it was a question of accountability. Too often we've seen Lisbon give the green light to things that are just reckless beyond. And now
you're right.
She has to now weigh the fact that she has maybe quite literally handed these harebrained schemes to a man who is not mentally well or who was not mentally well. But when you actually think about the reality of it, what Lisbon has done is she's given the green light to someone who has had a history of mental illness to hold a gun, stage a fire, to fake a death.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on.
But he's closing cases at the same time.
But he is closing
right?
cases. But he goes one step further in this episode. He outright lies to Manelli and Lisbon. This is the first time where he's not even getting reined in. To that point, it's really interesting because now as an audience, we're given insight into the fact that this is the man that she's let off the leash. So how much does closing a case, how much is that worth? Because the accountability there
it's worth
everything.
Whatever. Yeah, that's it.
Everything. And also not only that, but the fact that we've taken the case, that was entirely steered by Jane as well. This is a favor. There are a few interesting moments that got me questioning, what are the bounds of Jane's relationship with the CBI? There's a bit where they're talking to the professor.
I feel like this one kind of blew that out of the water a little bit, right?
Well, that's exactly what I mean, because there's a wonderful scene between Lisbon Jane and Stutzer where she says, you don't have to worry. Every member of the CBI is bound by a confidentiality and non-disclosure agreement. Yeah. And I was like, probably not him, though, right? If I would have
never got that paperwork, you know?
Yeah, if I were to venture a bet, I'd say that Jane probably didn't sign that.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, I think in the spirit of closing cases, and maybe we're getting a little too academic with it here. And what I do love about this show is that it can stand up to that kind of analysis.
Yeah.
Because we've earned the fact that Simon's playing of Patrick Jane is all of those contradictions. He is the nice guy. He is the charming guy. He's the easy breezy guy, but he's also the terribly damaged, terribly mentally inflicted, lost, angry, vengeful character. And to Ken's point, to play a hero, but to have an anti-hero arc, that's really interesting. We see it all the time now, but I think we forget back in 2008 when this show started.
That wasn't much of a
That wasn't the thing. It was everyone was like, I'm the guy.
Yeah, let's go.
That's, you know, and so to have someone consciously coward, consciously difficult, and now consciously available about his damage, sharing that with Lisbon is a big moment in the show. Having this as the first opportunity, episode 10, to really scratch a bit deeper into what makes Jane tick. I think that to me was one of the biggest takeaways of this episode. So yes, of course, you know, we can laugh at the morality engine, but I think what it does is that it sets a very broad stage for something that is far more specific and far more applicable. And that is that Jane is conflicted, and he is good, and he is evil, and he is vengeful, and he is understanding that vengeance isn't the right way to go. And how do you house all those contradictions? I think we're learning and we're finding as we go with him
how to do that. Yeah.
How to do that, you know? I think what I also appreciated about the Miller character was that it, for the first time, unveiled desperation in Jane, because there's a moment halfway through the episode where he realizes if Miller is guilty, he's in a lot of trouble, you know, and he says to her, now would be a real good time to get on a flight to Brazil if you're anything to do with this.
But is that desperation not for him, though? I mean, because, I mean, it's for her. No, it's more for her sake, right?
But he's put a lot on the line with Lisbon. For me, there's a lot of trust and a lot of sort of lies going on consistently in the series, but nowhere more so than in this episode.
No.
Lisbon has taken, as you say, on trust the fact that in spite of his odd and dubious methods, he closes cases. But now here, halfway through the episode, you see Jane actually wobbling and going, this woman who I've stuck my neck out for, I've asked the CBI team to take on a case that isn't traditionally within their jurisdiction. It was done as a reach, you know. He said, well, it's a state university.
I don't know that Jane cares. I don't know that he does, because it feels like if he's going to, this is nothing new. Him going, the only thing that's different is that he happens to know this person.
Sure.
But he goes out on limbs and sends the CBI on crazy missions regularly, episode after episode. I don't think it makes a difference because whether he knows this person or not. Now, on a personal level, certainly, right? He makes that comment like, oh, well, then that means that she's lied to me. And then Lisbon says, you know, you got one over on Jane. That's a sin. Or I forget what the exact wording of it, but he says, you're right. If she lied to me and I fell for it, that's a problem. Now, he's taking it personally. It has nothing to do, really, in my mind at least, to the fact that he has led the CBI down.
Agreed, but I will say this. I do think that the question of trust and who Jane can trust is a very, very wobbly thing for him. And I think that Miller has occupied, if she has done him wrong or lied to him, for a man who already probably has massive trust issues
To
and
take
who
away
has
the
had,
foundation of
to
everything.
take away the foundation of his
of everything
recovery,
that
which is
he-
probably represented by her. And then I think there is more than a burgeoning personal relationship with Lisbon, that I think if he did stick his neck out for this Dr. Miller and then it got her in hot water as well, that would be a personal disappointment for him. So the messiness of morality, how it's not easy, how it's not black and white. And if there's anything that we can take away from the morality dial, it's the fact that life isn't just about being able to turn it a little
Turn it
bit
on and
evil or
turn it
turn
off.
a little bit good, you know?
And we'll just end this section with, but he's been calibrated for evil.
I mean, I wondered where he was going to go with that at that point. Like we've just released an evil calibrated Patrick Jame.
I mean, and again, that's what another thing that I love is that we can say stuff like that, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
And we can have fun with it, and you know, we're not too precious about any of this stuff. And if we feel like going to this end of the storytelling spectrum, we can, and we do, and we fully embrace it, you know. And then the next episode, which is Red John's Friends, brings it back to sort of the grounded, you know, Red John murder mystery. The fact that we can regularly, whenever we want, come here and play, and then come back, it's lovely.
Yeah, and I think that is a great credit to Bruno, who is clearly steering the vision of this, because I found it fascinating hearing what Ken was saying a couple of episodes back, when he was saying that quite often the writers would be like, what's he doing? What is this show? Because they hadn't experienced anything like that. And I guess what he brought was a very different cable, European, whatever sensibility might have been, which wasn't traditionally seen. And I think there were many copycats after the fact.
Oh, of course.
But I do feel like our show benefited from being a show that for the first time, you'd have a hard time defining what our show was. People like to talk about dramedy. They like to talk about comedy or drama. Like if you're a drama writer, you can't be a comedy writer. There was so much comedy in our show. And yet it was, as you say, the most dramatic piece of television, engaging with, at times, the most horrifying subject matter.
To me, this episode was very much like the Casino episode. Every once in a while, it feels like we bring up a situation or a setting that is Patrick Jame, that is a con. The casino, or his former life, the casino is a con. We know walking in, it's a contrived situation. The house has the advantage, but we go in anyway for the entertainment value. Same reasons we would attend a Jane seminar. The Stutzer Institute itself ended up being a fraud, a con, something that we can't trust. And what I thought was interesting was the fact that this was an educational institution that was the fraud, and how much trust we put in our educational institutions. The casino was Jane, the Stutzer Institute is Jane. That was an interesting sort of parallel.
I think that's a real deft observation, and you're absolutely right. I think what I've come to appreciate as a viewer is the way that the show is a character, in the same way that California is a character. I think that this episode really does set up the complication involved, not just in Jane's predicament, but in everyone's predicament. Miller's life is messy. The university people, they have these sort of the need to deliver. And, they've got rid of this guy because he threatens not just the research money, but potentially all of the students and all of the fallout from that. So you're then asking very gray area questions. And that's what I appreciate about our show, in the same way that the tone can be varied. I think also the subject matter, the characters, the structure, it can be messy and it can be dirty, because guess what? So's real life. I always appreciate it when animal rights are taken seriously. I've worked with the Humane Society and PETA for a long time, and have seen both sides of the reactions to the way that those bodies work with and for the protection of animals. So I always appreciate when a positive spotlight is put on those things. The question of animal research is always a very difficult one. And I think it was nicely handled in the sense that I think it sort of condemned it, but it didn't get too graphic or brutal about it.
We weren't banging
No,
the
we weren't
drum
preaching
with
about it.
Yeah. And I think that even though that the setup was about animal cruelty or animal testing, as well as the setup also being about good versus evil, and we didn't pass any judgment on that. We just kind of put that out there, and it ended up being something completely different.
Into the second season, I actually ended up in my support of PETA doing a wonderful campaign for them called I'd Rather Go Bearskin Than Wear Bearskin.
Oh, I remember.
And I know you remember that because I posted it quite
Many
frequently
Yeah.
onto your computer
And you
as you were
texted
shooting
me
scenes.
the
And
ads and showed me the ads like on set. You would go, hey,
I mean,
check
this might be a good
out.
time to throw it up because
Yeah.
at the time I do remember thinking,
Should I find
I mean,
it?
don't
Right.
pull it up now.
This wonderful shot
Thank you for
I
throwing it up again.
saw over and over and over. I'm sitting in my chair. Okay, I'm sitting in my, just waiting and maybe looking at my phone, and then all of a sudden this happens. Right? You go, yeah, no, I've seen it, Owen. I've seen it. And then, and then this, right?
Was
and
I
then
the
on occasion
focus with
this
it?
would happen.
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious. There was an episode years later where you throw me a tiny
Yeah, I love that one.
tiny
It's the
shirt. I
bloopers.
love that
I'll throw in the
episode.
bloopers.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so great.
And we're on a camping episode, and the only shirts available, I think, are the kids' camping shirts. And I'm like, this is what you give me.
I'm the one that suggested the extra small shirt.
I think you did. Yeah.
It was
but it was
supposed to just
genius.
be a shirt.
It was brilliant.
It was supposed to just
No,
be
it's
like
brilliant.
just a shirt that says camp. And I go, you know what? Get the extra small.
Get the kids
and
one.
And you were totally game too. You were like, yes,
Oh yeah,
I think that'd
all
be
day.
great. Yeah. And so
in fact, the only thing I was concerned about was because you guys won't remember this, but as a pasty, self-conscious British person who doesn't see the sun very often, I was spray tanned to within an inch of my life.
Everybody, that was the thing. That was the thing back then. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So as I was putting on, but just to draw in my abs, it was like 300 style. I was like, don't bother going to the gym, just spray them in. So my main concern as I was wrangling this tiny shirt was, I hope I don't get any of the body makeup on there.
Yeah.
And
right.
in so doing,
Right.
Wipe off all my abs.
Right.
But yeah, very funny. We're really, really, really digging into the show as an avid reader again. Do you know what he was reading in this episode?
I don't remember it. And it was funny too that he's reading and all this other stuff is going on in the next room.
Oh yeah.
In a sting operation, you would expect Cho, Rigsby, and Van Pelt to sit there and be like, okay, listening for the cue, but no.
Now the only defense in that, because I watched it and it initially struck me as strange, and then I realized the whole thing's a setup. So it's not like it doesn't have the high stakes of a real thing. It's all nonsense. But I think it was also that as characters, we were also beginning to settle in a bit as well. This was something that I was always impressed and sort of intrigued by when playing soldiers. I did a very small part in American Sniper, and I remember and it's in the middle of an airstrike, right? And my gut reaction as a non-soldier obviously was like, oh, this is terrifying. I'm going to be amped up. I'm going to be, you got to send in reinforcements. You got to do this. You got to do this. And once I'd done the first take of it, the Marine technical advisor came over to me and he was like, we're pretty chill in these situations because we've trained again and again. And in fact, the more calm you are, the more the bigger the chance of survival. So, we've seen this a million times before. You don't need to be so amped up. Clint came over to me, and this was the only exchange I ever had with him. But it was amazing. And he went, what did that guy say? And I went, he told me to be a little less scared and just, he's like, no. Somebody's got to shit their pants. And I love that. I love the fact that, in amongst all of these cool, calm, collected characters, but I reference that because
That's amazing. That's
there
great.
is a point in this where you can't always be on
Sure.
Mach 10. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? So I kind of liked seeing the fact there was a little touch of the here's all of our cast.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Do we all need to be there?
Yeah.
Probably not, you know. But at the same time, seeing you reading a book, me having a bubble gum, you know, and Amanda doing, quite honestly, I don't know what Amanda was doing, but it all just sort of served to reinforce that this was their job. This is what they do every day.
It wasn't necessarily that they should sit there all amped up, you know,
No,
but it was like it was akin to taking a nap, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I kind of feel like we were at. We were at 0.
sure.
And I kind of feel like we should have been at 1.
Yeah, you know,
You know, that's all. That was the only observation I made.
I do want, before we wrap things up, to address obviously the cuffs in the room.
800-pound gorilla in the room, or
So tell us.
150-pound older gentleman. At the end, Chancellor Stern, Cho comes in to read the rights and arrest Chancellor Stern, played by Lawrence Pressman. Actor, active since the 70s. He was in Shaft, the original Shaft movie. He's been in every major network TV show since then. In fact, he was on the original Hawaii Five-0. He was on the new Hawaii Five-0, and he was on Magnum that I did. And
Did you work with him on Magnum?
I did work with him briefly on Magnum. I didn't have any interaction with him, but we were in the same scene together. And so the scene where Cho comes in and reads Chancellor Stern his rights and cuffs him, you know, hands on your head, the whole thing. And I believe this was during rehearsal. I just wanted to sort out all I'm going to cuff one wrist, bring it down, and I'm going to do the palming trick that we all have come to know.
And I have to preface this by saying that Tim is quite easily the best cuffer on the cast. So if this happened to you, I can't even imagine how I would have butchered it.
Okay, let's try it. Let's go. Action. So we come in, rehearse it. I clack the cuff on his hand, bring it down, bring his other arm down, click, click, click. Okay, and walk him out. Cut. Okay, great. Lawrence turns and goes, I think you got my wrist. And I was like, what do you mean got your wrist? You know, and he lifted up his hand, and the hand that I had cuffed was bleeding profusely. I was shocked, and I was like, oh my God, what happened there? And I remember him saying, oh no, it's okay. But I remember him being a little bit annoyed by it. And rightly so. Like, he shouldn't have been injured to where he's bleeding on the show. And I'll never forget, he said something along the lines of, you know what, it's okay. You know, I'll get a Band-Aid, or we'll take care of it. He said, but I've got really thin skin, so if you can be careful with the next one. I was like, oh my God, of course. I'm so sorry. I was mortified, and
Did
Lawrence,
you have
if you're listening, I still am mortified, and all apologies for that occurrence.
Well, I will say this: he should thank his lucky stars he wasn't being cuffed by Rigsby, because it could have got real ugly. You are a master of that. I've had the pleasure of working with you for years. I know that would never have been something that you would have done out of force, total accident, and it's the worst feeling.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pressman.
Bless him. Yes, our apologies. Next week we are going to be digging into episode 11,
Red John's
Friends. Yes. So
written by Bruno Heller, directed by Simon's fellow Aussie, John Poulson.
Love that guy. I worked with him a couple of times actually after The Mentalist as well.
Yes.
We worked on the centenary episode of Sherlock together. He was a great guy.
He taught me a great lesson, because he directed one of the Cho episodes, and because he's an actor as well.
Yeah.
So he could impart some real sort of he's an actor's director.
Tune in next week, where we shall be getting right back to the man in question, Red John. And it's going to be a good one, because it's from the man himself, Bruno Heller. Until then, we've been the TV Police. You have a great week.